Hey everybody, this is Doug Kenny from Relentless and Unstoppable, and today we have Michael Hingson with us. Hey man, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Doug. Thanks very much for having us on.
No problem. So, where are you originally from?
I was born in Chicago and moved to California when I was 5.
Ah, okay. What was your upbringing like?
Well, I was born 2 months premature back in 1950, and at that time, people didn't really understand some things, like if you're a premature baby, if you were given a pure oxygen environment, that could do things to your retina that would cause it to malform, and it could cause blindness. And that's exactly what happened to me. It happened to a lot of kids in the baby boomer era who were born prematurely. We actually brought the average age of blindness, I understand, from 67 down to 65. So there were a bunch of preemies who became blind, and I happened to be one of them. But the doctors told my parents to send me to a home for handicapped kids because no blind child could ever grow up to amount to anything. And my parents just plain said, "You guys are wrong. He can grow up to do whatever he wants to do, and we're going to give him every opportunity." And they did.
Ah, that's really incredible. So, are you completely blind or only partly blind?
No, I am. I'm totally blind. So I'm not low vision. I'm totally blind.
Ah, okay. So, what was it like growing up with blindness? Were people supportive of you? Did you face bullying? What was it like?
There wasn't a lot of bullying where I grew up in Palmdale out in California. When I came out, I had been to kindergarten in Chicago, but California had a rule that you couldn't start kindergarten until you were 5. So I had a second year, which was a little bit boring because there were no special programs for blind kids in my school district. But I didn't get a lot of bullying. I think there was a little tiny bit a couple times, but nothing really overly major for me. I fit in as well as I could. I didn't participate probably in a lot of the extracurricular activities, sports and stuff growing up. On the other hand, my mind was more with science and math, and I did participate in the mathletes, the math tournaments in high school, and got a letter for that. So I guess I got a chance to, or would have been eligible to be in the Letterman Club, but I graduated, so I didn't get to be. But I grew up just believing that I could do the same things as everyone else. There were differences. I didn't have books in Braille until I was in the 4th grade because there was no process to get them in our district. And then between 3rd and 4th grade, the school district hired someone and I as a resource teacher. And so I then got access to Braille materials and so could participate in some ways a little bit more fully. But even so, I was able to participate in a lot of different ways. My parents helped by providing me with the opportunity to know what was going on by reading material to me and other things like that. So I grew up believing that I could do what I chose to do. I didn't even think much about the fact that I might be doing it differently. It just never crossed my mind. I just did it.
Ah, okay. That's good on you, man. That's really good that you never let anything stop you. Like relentless and unstoppable. That's definitely what you are.
Well, thank you. We try to, and that's why I even have a podcast called Unstoppable Mindset, which is another story.
That's incredible. So, what brought you to New York on what was coincidentally the 9/11 attacks day?
In 1996, I was working for a computer company in Carlsbad, California, and I was asked to relocate to New York, which wasn't really my first choice if I had to relocate. But we did for the company because I had been selling to the East Coast from Carlsbad, California, actually living in Vista, but then the company was a couple miles away in Carlsbad, so worked there every day. And so we relocated and I opened an office for them actually in Tower 2 of the World Trade Center on the 23rd floor. And I worked there, then got recruited away in 1997, and then got recruited away by another company, Quantum Corporation, in 1999. And I was recruited because I had been selling some quantum products actually from a division of quantum called ATL, which was selling and manufacturing tape backup library systems. And I was hired to open an office for quantum in New York. So I commuted every day from Westfield, New Jersey into New York by by a car and then two trains, and that eventually had me end up on the fourth sublevel under the World Trade Center and would go up to my office, which we got on the 78th floor of Tower 1. When we opened the office, we looked at options, and the World Trade Center had enough of a low occupancy that we were able to get a good rate for an office when we opened ours. And so that's what we chose to do. So we were on the 78th floor. We opened the office and got all of our demo equipment in. I hired people to work for me, both in sales, and was involved in hiring and working with the service people and pre-sales engineers and so on. But my job was to run the office and to be the lead, which is what I did.
I see. That's really interesting. Just wondering, was the World Trade Center like a series of offices where you could do work and for your companies that you had to rent or something? Was that what it was?
So the two towers were primarily offices, and there were some retail establishments in them. And between all of the 7 towers on the first floor was a shopping mall with a lot of little kiosks, and there were also other stores and so on the first floor. But mostly going up from there were offices, and you rented an office, your company rented an office. Some Wall Street firms had trading floors in the World Trade Center. A lot of companies had varying degrees of sizes of offices. So yes, it was definitely a place of business. It was also connected directly to what was called the World Financial Center, which again were buildings where companies had offices and trading floors and so on. So it was a pretty extensive complex all the way around.
Okay. What happened on 9/11 from your experience?
On September 11th, it for me started out as a pretty normal kind of a day. I went into the office. We were preparing to do some sales seminars. We had 50 people coming in over 4 seminars on September 11th. The people were from reseller partners that we had, and we were going to teach them how to sell our products. I was going to do all the technical stuff. My background is technical. I have a master's degree in physics and have always been involved in technical things. David Frank, a colleague from our corporate office in California, was in the office that day because he was going to be talking about pricing models and working with people on pricing. But primarily going forward, the plan was that I would be the general contact and they'd work with David when they needed to. But David and I were in my office. We had some early arrival guests from our major distributor, Ingram Micro, in our conference room eating breakfast. And at 8:45 in the morning, we kind of heard a muffled explosion, and then literally the building tipped. If you take a spring, for example, and fasten or hold the very bottom of it on a table and then push the top, that's exactly what the tower did. Tall buildings like that are flexible. They're made to flex in windstorms and so on. And it's not like an airplane hadn't hit a building before. One crashed into the Empire State Building in the 1940s because it got lost in a fog bank. So tall buildings like that are made to sway, which is exactly what happened. So the building tipped. And as I describe it to people, we probably moved about 20 feet. And then the building came back. By that time, I was standing in the doorway between my office and the main part of our office facility, the main room and the entrances and so on. And David and I actually said goodbye to each other because we thought the building had tipped so far that we were about to take a 78th floor plunge to the street. But it didn't. The building stopped, and then it came back to be vertical again. Now, I use a guide dog, and I want to explain what a guide dog does and what it doesn't do. What a guide dog does not do is lead a blind person. So anyone who ever uses the term, my guide dog Roselle saved me, led me out of the towers and so on, is absolutely, totally not understanding what guide dogs do. The dog's job is to make sure that we walk safe. It is my job and my responsibility to know where to go and how to get there. And so the way I did that around the World Trade Center is I spent a lot of time wandering around the complex, learning all the landmarks I could, learning where everything was, learn where all the little kiosks and shops were on the first floor, learn where all the major offices were, learn where emergency exits were, worked with the Port Authority and security people and fire and disaster emergency people to know everything I could about what to do in an emergency, because I was responsible for the lives of anybody that would be in my office if there were ever an emergency. So it was important for me to know what to do, not the dog, because if I teach the dog one particular route, what happens if that route happens to be blocked by fire? It's got to me and was my responsibility to know where to go and how to get there. But the reason for saying that is also because I learned everything that I could about the system and the complex. What I also did was developed a mindset that said, you know what to do if there's an emergency. I did it so much, especially during the first few weeks, but even after that, almost every day when I went into the complex, I said, any more you can learn today? Because I knew that if there ever was an emergency, that I would be responsible, as I said, for people. And there had been an emergency once before in 1993 when a car bomb blew up in the parking lot under the World Trade Center. It didn't do much damage, but still the die had been cast. So I knew what to do if there was an emergency. And when one actually occurred, the mindset kicked in. So I knew what to do and needed to focus. Could something have changed from what happened? Sure, the building could have collapsed, and a lot of good that would have done me or anyone else, but you can only go with what you have available. And my knowledge is what helped us. So as we did things to evacuate, I directed my guide dog with commands, helped other people, and then we continued to do what we needed to do to get out and survive.